The early morning California sun cast long shadows across the concrete courtyard of Camp Pendleton as recruits filed into formation. Among the sea of green uniforms and serious faces, Sofia Martinez stood quietly in the back row, her small frame barely visible behind the shoulders of her fellow Marines. At 5 feet 2 inches and weighing just over 100 pounds, she looked more like someone who belonged in a college library than on a military training ground. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez paced in front of the assembled group, his boots clicking against the asphalt with military precision. His weathered face bore the marks of 20 years of service, and his voice carried the authority of someone who had seen combat in 3 different countries. Today was the day he had been dreading, the quarterly combat readiness assessment that would test every Marine's ability to handle real-world scenarios. "Listen up, Marines," Rodriguez barked, his voice echoing off the surrounding buildings. "Today's exercise isn't about showing off or proving how tough you think you are. It's about demonstrating that you can protect your fellow Marines and complete your mission under pressure. Each of you will face 5 scenarios designed to test your tactical thinking, physical capability, and mental toughness." Sofia adjusted her equipment belt, feeling the weight of the training weapons and gear distributed around her waist. She had spent countless hours preparing for this day, studying tactical manuals until her eyes burned and practicing combat drills until her muscles ached. Yet she knew that many of her fellow Marines still saw her as the weak link in their unit. The whispers had started on her first day at camp. Other recruits would glance at her during physical training, shaking their heads when she struggled to complete pull-ups or carry heavy equipment. During hand-to-hand combat training, instructors often paired her with smaller opponents, assuming she couldn't handle the intensity of fighting larger Marines. Even some of the drill instructors seemed to view her as a liability rather than an asset. "Martinez," Rodriguez called out, causing her to snap to attention. "You'll be in the 3rd group. Don't let us down." The words stung more than they should have. Sofia had graduated top of her class in military strategy and scored higher than most of her peers on written examinations. She could disassemble and reassemble an M16 rifle faster than Marines with twice her experience. But none of that seemed to matter when people looked at her and saw only her size. As the first group moved toward the training course, Sofia watched carefully, studying their movements and noting their mistakes. The course was designed like a small urban environment, complete with buildings, alleyways, and simulated civilian areas. Marines had to navigate through 5 different scenarios, each more challenging than the last. The first scenario involved rescuing a wounded comrade while under enemy fire. Sofia observed as Corporal Johnson, a muscular man from Texas, attempted to carry his wounded partner to safety. His approach was direct and forceful, relying on his physical strength to power through the obstacles. He completed the mission successfully, but his technique was inefficient and left him exhausted for the remaining challenges. The second scenario required disarming an explosive device while coordinating with a team spread across multiple buildings. Private Williams, known for his quick reflexes, approached this challenge with confidence. However, his communication skills proved lacking, and he failed to coordinate effectively with his team members, leading to a mission failure. Sofia continued to analyze each performance, taking mental notes about what worked and what didn't. She noticed that the Marines who relied solely on physical strength often struggled with the more complex strategic elements of the course. Those who focused only on tactics sometimes lacked the physical capability to execute their plans effectively. When her group was called forward, Sofia felt her heart rate increase. The other 4 Marines in her group were all significantly larger and more imposing than she was. Corporal Thompson, a former college football player, stood nearly 6 feet tall and weighed over 200 pounds. Sergeant Davis had arms like tree trunks and could bench press twice his body weight. Private Knox moved with the fluid grace of someone who had trained in martial arts since childhood. Private Chen possessed the kind of wiry strength that came from years of rock climbing and endurance training. As they approached the first scenario area, Sofia could hear some of the Marines from earlier groups making comments about her chances. "Poor little Martinez," one of them whispered. "She's going to get destroyed out there." Another added, "I bet she doesn't make it past the first challenge." The first scenario area was set up like a bombed-out building. Their mission was to rescue 3 hostages while neutralizing armed enemies positioned throughout the structure. The catch was that they only had 15 minutes to complete the task, and they had to work as a coordinated team. Corporal Thompson immediately took charge, his voice booming as he outlined a direct assault plan. "We go in hard and fast," he declared. "Davis and Knox take the front entrance, Chen covers the rear, and Martinez." He paused, looking at her with barely concealed doubt. "You stay back and provide communication support." Sophia felt anger flare in her chest, but she kept her expression neutral. She had studied building assault tactics extensively and knew that Thompson's plan was flawed. A direct assault would alert the enemies and potentially put the hostages at risk. Moreover, relegating her to a support role based on her appearance rather than her capabilities was exactly the kind of thinking that got Marines killed in real combat. "Corporal," she said quietly, "I think we should consider a different approach. The building layout suggests that a frontal assault will trigger defensive positions on the upper floors. If we coordinate a distraction at the front while smaller teams enter through alternate routes, we could neutralize threats more efficiently." Thompson's face reddened slightly. "Martinez, I appreciate the input, but I've got this handled. Just follow orders and we'll be fine." The assault began exactly as Sophia had predicted it would. Thompson and Davis charged through the front entrance, immediately triggering alarms and drawing fire from multiple positions. Knox and Chen provided covering fire, but they were quickly pinned down by enemies positioned on the upper levels. The noise and chaos alerted every hostile in the building, turning what should have been a surgical operation into a prolonged firefight. Sophia watched from her assigned position as her teammates struggled against increasingly desperate odds. The hostages were moved deeper into the building as the enemies realized they were under attack. Time was running out, and their mission was failing. Without waiting for permission, Sophia slipped away from her communication post and circled around to the side of the building. She had noticed a maintenance entrance during her initial survey, a small door that was likely unguarded because it appeared too narrow for most Marines to use effectively. The door was indeed unguarded, and Sophia slipped inside the building like a shadow. Her small size, which her teammates saw as a weakness, allowed her to move through spaces that would have been impossible for larger Marines to navigate. She crawled through ventilation shafts, climbed through broken windows, and squeezed between debris piles that would have stopped her bulkier colleagues. While her team continued their noisy frontal assault, Sophia systematically eliminated enemies from behind. Her approach was methodical and silent, using the chaos created by her teammates as cover for her own movements. She disabled 3 armed hostiles without firing a single shot, using hand-to-hand combat techniques she had perfected during countless hours of solo training. When she reached the room where the hostages were being held, Sophia faced her most challenging obstacle yet. 2 guards stood between her and the civilians, both armed and alert. A direct confrontation would be risky, especially since any gunfire might prompt the guards to harm the hostages. Sophia studied the room layout through a small window, calculating angles and timing. The guards were positioned near the entrance, expecting threats to come from the direction of the ongoing firefight. They had their backs partially turned to the side window where she was positioned. Moving with careful precision, Sophia removed a flashbang grenade from her equipment belt. These devices were designed to disorient enemies with bright light and loud noise without causing permanent harm. She calculated the throw angle needed to position the device behind the guards while minimizing exposure to the hostages. The flashbang detonated perfectly, stunning both guards and allowing Sophia to enter through the window. She quickly secured both hostiles and began evacuating the hostages through the same route she had used to enter the building. Her small size proved advantageous once again, as she could guide the civilians through escape routes that would have been impassable for larger rescue teams. By the time Thompson and the others realized what had happened, Sophia was already leading the 3rd hostage to safety outside the building. The entire rescue operation had taken her less than 8 minutes, well under the 15-minute time limit. The silence that followed was deafening. The Marines who had been making jokes about her capabilities stood speechless as they watched her emerge from the building with the final hostage. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez approached the group, his expression unreadable. "Martinez," he said, his voice carrying across the training area. "Report." Sophia stood at attention, her uniform barely showing signs of the intense operation she had just completed. "Mission accomplished, Staff Sergeant. 3 hostages rescued, 6 hostiles neutralized, 0 casualties on our team." Rodriguez examined the building, noting the evidence of Sophia's unconventional approach. Scuff marks near the maintenance entrance, the precision placement of the flashbang device, and the efficient neutralization of enemies painted a clear picture of tactical excellence that went far beyond what anyone had expected. "Outstanding work, Marine," Rodriguez said, and Sophia could hear the genuine respect in his voice. "Your approach demonstrated superior tactical thinking and effective use of available resources." As they moved toward the second scenario, Sophia noticed that the dynamic within her group had shifted. Thompson no longer spoke with the same dismissive tone, and the other Marines began asking her opinion on their approach to the next challenge. More importantly, the comments from the sidelines had stopped entirely. The second scenario was designed to test urban combat skills in a simulated city environment. Their mission was to locate and eliminate a high-value target while avoiding civilian casualties and minimizing collateral damage. The target was hidden somewhere within a maze of buildings, protected by an unknown number of guards and booby traps. This time, when Corporal Thompson began outlining their strategy, he turned to Sophia first. "Martinez, what's your assessment of the situation?" Sophia studied the urban environment, noting the sightlines, potential hiding spots, and likely defensive positions. The layout reminded her of case studies she had read about urban warfare in Iraq and Afghanistan. Success would require patience, careful reconnaissance, and precise execution. The target will likely be positioned in a building that offers multiple escape routes but also provides defensive advantages, she said. Based on the layout, I'd estimate either the 3-story building in the center or the warehouse complex on the eastern edge. Both offer strategic advantages, but they also present different tactical challenges. Davis nodded thoughtfully. "How do you suggest we approach the reconnaissance?" "We need to gather intelligence without alerting the defensive perimeter," Sophia replied. "I recommend splitting into 2 teams for initial surveillance, then regrouping to coordinate our final approach based on what we discover." Thompson agreed with her assessment, and they divided into teams for the reconnaissance phase. Sophia partnered with Private Chen, whose rock climbing experience made him an excellent choice for navigating the urban terrain. Together, they approached the central building complex while Thompson's team surveyed the warehouse area. The central building proved to be heavily fortified, with guards positioned at key windows and rooftops. Sophia and Chen observed the patrol patterns, noting the timing of guard rotations and identifying potential weak points in the defensive perimeter. After 20 minutes of careful observation, they had mapped the entire security layout. When the teams regrouped, Thompson's group reported that the warehouse appeared less heavily defended but offered fewer tactical advantages for the defenders. Based on the intelligence gathered, Sophia recommended focusing on the central building, despite its stronger defenses. "The warehouse is a decoy," she explained. "The lighter defenses are designed to draw us toward a trap. The real target is in the central building, probably on the second floor where they can control access while maintaining escape options." Her analysis proved correct. Using a coordinated approach that combined distraction tactics with precise infiltration, the team successfully located and neutralized the high-value target. Sophia's role in the operation involved climbing to the building's roof and providing overwatch for her teammates as they entered from multiple directions. From her elevated position, she had a clear view of the entire operational area. When enemy reinforcements appeared from an unexpected direction, threatening to overwhelm Thompson and Davis, Sophia provided accurate covering fire that allowed her teammates to complete their mission safely. The third scenario tested their ability to operate in a chemically contaminated environment while evacuating civilians. This challenge required them to work in full protective gear, which added weight and reduced visibility while increasing the physical demands of every action. For most Marines, the bulky protective equipment represented a significant handicap. The suits were designed for average-sized personnel, which meant that larger Marines like Thompson and Davis found their movements severely restricted. The equipment added 40 pounds of weight and made fine motor control much more difficult. Sophia, however, found that her smaller frame worked to her advantage once again. The protective suit fit her better than it did her larger teammates, and the additional weight represented a smaller percentage of her total body mass. While her colleagues struggled with the cumbersome equipment, she moved with relative ease through the contaminated area. Their mission was to locate and evacuate 5 civilians trapped in a contaminated building while avoiding exposure to simulated chemical agents. The civilians were positioned throughout the structure, and each rescue had to be completed within strict time limits to prevent simulated chemical exposure. Working as a team, they systematically cleared the building floor by floor. Sophia's agility in the protective gear allowed her to reach civilians in difficult locations, including a simulated victim trapped in a collapsed section of the building. Her smaller size enabled her to crawl through debris that would have been impassable for her larger teammates. The fourth scenario shifted focus to vehicle-based operations. Their mission was to disable an enemy convoy while protecting friendly forces in the area. This challenge required them to coordinate between ground-based teams and simulated air support while managing multiple moving targets. Sophia's role in this scenario involved operating advanced communication equipment to coordinate between different elements of their force. Her technical training and attention to detail proved invaluable as she managed information flow between ground teams, simulated aircraft, and command personnel. The complexity of coordinating multiple elements while under simulated enemy fire tested every aspect of their training. Sophia's clear communication and precise timing helped her team successfully complete their mission with minimal simulated casualties and maximum effectiveness. As they approached the final scenario, Sophia could see that her fellow Marines viewed her differently than they had at the beginning of the day. The jokes and dismissive comments had been replaced by genuine respect and professional acknowledgement of her capabilities. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez had been observing all their operations, and Sophia noticed that he paid particular attention to her performance in each scenario. She suspected that this final challenge would test everything they had learned and demonstrated throughout the day. The fifth and final scenario was designed as the ultimate test of their combat readiness. They would face a complex multi-phase operation that combined elements from all the previous challenges while adding new complications and time pressures. Success would require every member of the team to perform at their highest level while working together as a cohesive unit. As they prepared for this final challenge, Sophia reflected on how much had changed since the morning formation. She had proven to herself and others that physical size was only one factor in combat effectiveness. More importantly, she had demonstrated that underestimating an opponent based on appearance could be a fatal mistake. The lessons learned during these scenarios would stay with all of them long after the training exercise ended. Combat effectiveness came from the combination of physical capability, mental toughness, tactical knowledge, and the ability to work as part of a team. Size and strength mattered, but they were not the only factors that determined success in challenging situations. Standing with her teammates as they prepared for their final challenge, Sophia felt a sense of confidence that had been building throughout the day. She had faced every test with determination and skill, proving that the Marines who had labeled her as fragile had seriously underestimated her capabilities. The real test was about to begin, and Sophia was ready to show exactly what she could accomplish when given the opportunity to prove herself. The final scenario area looked like a war zone. Military engineers had constructed an elaborate training facility that combined urban warfare, hostage rescue, vehicle operations, and chemical contamination protocols into one comprehensive challenge. Multiple buildings, underground tunnels, vehicle obstacles, and simulated civilians created an environment that tested every skill Marines might need in real combat situations. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez gathered the 5 Marines around a tactical map of the area. The morning's earlier exercises had been preparation for this moment, the ultimate test that would determine their combat readiness ratings and future assignment opportunities. Rodriguez's expression was serious as he outlined their mission parameters. Your objective is complex and time-sensitive, he began, pointing to various locations on the map. Enemy forces have taken control of this facility and are holding 12 civilians hostage in 3 separate locations. Intelligence indicates they possess chemical weapons and have booby-trapped multiple access routes. Your mission is to neutralize all threats, secure the chemical weapons, and evacuate all hostages within 45 minutes. Sophia studied the map carefully, noting the interconnected nature of the challenge. Unlike the previous scenarios that focused on specific skills, this final test required seamless integration of everything they had learned. The enemy positions were strategically placed to force difficult tactical decisions, and the time pressure meant that any mistakes would be costly. Additional complications, Rodriguez continued, include simulated civilian traffic in the outer perimeter, potential friendly fire situations with other Marine units operating in adjacent sectors, and environmental hazards including possible structural collapse in the older buildings. Private Chan raised his hand. Staff Sergeant, what are our rules of engagement regarding civilian protection? Zero tolerance for civilian casualties, Rodriguez replied firmly. Any action that results in civilian harm will result in immediate mission failure, regardless of other objectives completed. Thompson looked at the map with growing concern. The complexity of the mission was beyond anything they had faced individually. Success would require perfect coordination and the ability to adapt quickly when their initial plans encountered unexpected obstacles. Martinez, Rodriguez said, based on your performance in the previous scenarios, you'll serve as the tactical coordinator for this mission. Your job is to maintain overall situational awareness and coordinate between team elements as they execute their assigned tasks.
The assignment surprised everyone, including Sophia.
Tactical coordinator was typically given to the senior Marine or someone with extensive field experience. The fact that Rodriguez had chosen her, despite her junior rank and small stature, spoke volumes about how her earlier performance had changed perceptions.
Thompson nodded respectfully. "What's our initial approach, Martinez?"
Sophia felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders, but also a surge of confidence from the trust her teammates were showing. She studied the map again, considering multiple approaches and their potential consequences.
"The key is information," she said finally.
"We need to gather intelligence on all 3 hostage locations before committing to any rescue attempts. If we move too quickly on one location, the enemies at the other sites might harm their hostages or move them to more defensible positions." She pointed to several observation points around the facility. "I recommend we establish overwatch positions here and here, then use stealth reconnaissance to map the entire enemy disposition before beginning any direct action."
Davis considered her proposal. "That's going to take time we might not have."
"Time spent gathering intelligence is never wasted," Sophia replied. "Rushing into a complex situation without proper information is how Marines get killed and missions fail." Knox agreed with her assessment.
"She's right.
We've got 45 minutes, which sounds like a lot, but once we start active operations, everything will move very quickly." They moved to the starting position, a simulated forward operating base about 400 meters from the target facility.
Sophia established her coordination position in an elevated bunker that provided line-of-sight communication with all areas of the operational zone.
From her position, she could see the entire facility through high-powered binoculars and maintain radio contact with each team member. The coordination role required her to process information from multiple sources simultaneously while making tactical decisions that would affect everyone's safety. Chen and Knox moved out first, using their combined climbing and martial arts skills to approach the facility from unexpected angles. Their mission was pure reconnaissance, identify enemy positions, locate hostages, and map potential escape routes without engaging in combat. Thompson and Davis took a different approach, positioning themselves to provide covering fire and serve as a rapid response team if the reconnaissance teams encountered trouble. Their heavier weapons and greater physical strength made them ideal for dealing with heavily fortified positions. As the teams moved into position, Sophia began receiving information that painted a complex picture of the enemy situation. Chen reported that the northern building contained 4 hostages but was defended by at least 6 enemies with automatic weapons. Knox discovered that the central facility had 3 hostages but was rigged with explosives that could be triggered remotely. The southern complex presented the most challenging situation. Davis observed 8 enemies protecting 5 hostages, but the building layout made a direct assault almost impossible without significant risk to the civilians. "All teams, this is Coordinator," Sophia transmitted over the radio. "Based on current intelligence, I'm seeing a coordinated defense designed to make simultaneous rescue impossible. If we assault one location, they'll likely execute hostages at the others." Thompson's voice crackled through the radio.
"What do you recommend?"
Sophia studied her notes and the facility layout, looking for patterns and weaknesses in the enemy strategy. The answer came to her as she noticed the timing of guard rotations at each location. "The key is the timing window," she transmitted. "Guard rotations at all 3 sites occur at 12-minute intervals, but they're staggered.
There's a 90-second window every 12 minutes when all 3 locations have reduced security due to shift changes." Knox confirmed her observation.
"I can see the pattern from my position.
Guards are moving between posts, creating temporary blind spots."
"That's our opportunity," Sophia continued.
"We'll coordinate simultaneous assaults during the next security transition window.
Each team will have exactly 90 seconds to neutralize threats and secure hostages before enemy reinforcements respond." The plan required precise timing and flawless execution. Any team that failed to complete their objective within the narrow time window would face overwhelming resistance and potentially trigger retaliation against the remaining hostages.
Davis voiced the concern they all shared. 90 seconds isn't much time for a building assault. "It's enough if we execute perfectly," Sophia replied.
"Chen and Knox will take the northern building, their speed and agility are perfect for that environment. Thompson and Davis will handle the southern complex, using their firepower advantage to overwhelm the larger enemy force.
I'll assault the central facility solo." "Solo?" Thompson questioned.
"That's the most dangerous target. It's also the most technically challenging, Sophia explained.
The explosives require careful handling, and my size advantage will be crucial for navigating around the booby traps.
As they waited for the next rotation window, Sophia reviewed every detail of the central facility layout. The building contained 3 hostages spread across 2 floors, with explosives positioned at key structural points. The enemy had clearly planned to bring down the entire building if their position was threatened.
Rotation beginning now, Knox reported. I can see guards moving to new positions. All teams, execute in 30 seconds, Sophia commanded, watching the facility through her binoculars. The coordination window was opening exactly as she had predicted.
Chen and Knox moved like shadows toward the northern building. Their approach was silent and efficient, using the temporary confusion of the guard rotation to slip past the outer perimeter undetected. Thompson and Davis advanced on the southern complex with controlled aggression. Their larger size meant they couldn't rely on stealth, but their firepower and tactical experience allowed them to overwhelm enemy positions through superior force and coordination. Sophia descended from her coordination position and sprinted toward the central facility. Her approach required absolute precision. One wrong step could trigger the explosives and kill everyone in the building. The building's entrance was booby-trapped with a pressure-sensitive device, but Sophia had identified an alternate route through a loading dock on the eastern side. The entrance was unguarded during the rotation period, just as she had calculated. Inside the building, Sophia moved with the careful precision of a bomb disposal expert. The explosives were positioned to maximize structural damage, but their placement also created safe corridors for someone who understood the blast patterns. She located the first hostage on the ground floor, a simulated civilian trapped behind a barricade that was surrounded by improvised explosive devices. The enemy had positioned the explosives to make rescue appear impossible, but Sophia identified a narrow approach angle that avoided the trigger mechanisms. Crawling on her stomach through a space barely wider than her shoulders, Sophia reached the hostage and began the evacuation process. Her small size allowed her to maneuver in spaces that would have been impossible for larger Marines to navigate. The second hostage was located on the upper floor, in a room that could only be accessed through a corridor lined with motion-sensitive explosives. Sophia studied the device placement and realized that the sensors were calibrated for normal-sized personnel moving at walking speed. By moving extremely slowly and staying close to the floor, she could pass under the sensor detection threshold. The process was agonizingly slow, but she successfully reached the second hostage without triggering any alarms. The third hostage presented the greatest challenge. The civilian was located in a room where the explosives were positioned to collapse the entire floor if triggered. Moreover, the enemy had placed guards in the room who would detonate the charges if they detected any rescue attempt. Sophia studied the situation through a small ventilation grate, calculating angles and timing. The guards were positioned near the windows, watching for external threats. They hadn't considered the possibility of someone approaching through the building's ventilation system. Moving through the ductwork required extreme flexibility and absolute silence. Her small frame was perfectly suited for the confined space, and her careful movement prevented any noise that might alert the guards below. When she reached the position directly above the hostage, Sophia faced a critical decision. She could drop into the room and attempt to overwhelm both guards simultaneously, or she could try to create a distraction that would draw them away from their explosive triggers. She chose a combination approach. Using a small noise-making device, she created sounds at the opposite end of the building that suggested an assault team was approaching from that direction. As the guards moved to investigate, she dropped through the ceiling and quickly secured the third hostage. Central facility hostages secure, she transmitted as she guided the 3 civilians toward the exit. All explosive devices remain stable. Chen's voice came through the radio next. Northern building clear, 4 hostages evacuated safely. Thompson followed with his report. Southern complex secured. 5 hostages safe, 8 enemies neutralized. With all hostages rescued, the mission entered its final phase, securing the chemical weapons and ensuring the facility was completely cleared of threats. Intelligence indicated that the weapons were stored in an underground facility connected to the main buildings. Sophia regrouped with her teammates at a central rally point, where they quickly assessed their situation. All hostages were safe, and no team members had been injured during the rescue operations. However, the most dangerous part of their mission still lay ahead. The underground facility required different tactics than the surface buildings. The confined spaces and potential chemical contamination meant they would need to operate in full protective gear while navigating an unknown layout. Based on building schematics, the underground access is through the maintenance area of the central facility, Sophia briefed the team. The space is designed for utility access, which means narrow corridors and limited maneuvering room.
Thompson nodded.
That environment favors your advantages, Martinez.
You should take point on the underground operation.
The decision felt natural now. Throughout the day, Sophia had proven that leadership wasn't about size or traditional impressions of strength. It was about understanding situations, making good decisions under pressure, and utilizing every team member's unique capabilities effectively. As they prepared to enter the underground facility, Sophia reflected on how completely the dynamic had changed since the morning formation. The Marines who had whispered about her fragility now trusted her to lead them through the most dangerous part of their mission. The underground tunnels were exactly as challenging as expected. The protective gear made movement difficult, and the narrow spaces created natural choke points where enemy forces could establish defensive positions. However, Sophia's ability to navigate tight spaces while maintaining tactical awareness proved invaluable. They encountered 3 separate defensive positions in the underground facility, each designed to maximize the advantage of defenders over attackers. But Sophia's unconventional approaches consistently found weaknesses that larger, more conventional assault teams would have missed. The chemical weapons storage area was heavily fortified and required careful handling to prevent contamination. The devices were sophisticated enough that improper handling could result in simulated casualties across a wide area. Working with methodical precision, Sophia and her team secured all chemical weapons and neutralized the remaining enemy forces.
Their mission was completed with 3 minutes to spare on the 45-minute time limit.
As they emerged from the underground facility, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez was waiting with several other training supervisors. The expressions on their faces indicated that the entire exercise had been closely monitored and evaluated.
Outstanding performance, Rodriguez announced.
Mission objectives achieved with 0 casualties and exceptional tactical execution. Standing with her teammates, Sophia felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had not only proven her own capabilities but had also demonstrated the importance of looking beyond surface appearances when evaluating potential. The day had started with whispers about her fragility and doubts about her ability to contribute meaningfully to Marine operations. It was ending with genuine respect from her peers and recognition from her superiors that she possessed unique capabilities that made her an invaluable team member. But, more importantly, Sophia had proven to herself that the limitations others placed on her were not reflections of her actual capabilities. Physical size was just one factor in determining effectiveness, and often not the most important one. The Marines who had labeled her fragile had learned that assumptions could be dangerous, especially in situations where lives depended on accurate assessment of capabilities and potential. 3 weeks after the combat readiness assessment, Sophia found herself standing in Colonel Patricia Hayes' office, trying to process what she was hearing. The colonel, a decorated veteran with silver hair and keen gray eyes, had just offered her something she never expected: a recommendation for advanced tactical training and a potential position with Marine Special Operations. "Your performance during the assessment was exceptional, Martinez," Colonel Hayes said, reviewing a thick file spread across her desk. "But, more than that, your approach to problem-solving and leadership under pressure demonstrates exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need in special operations." Sophia maintained her professional composure, but internally she was reeling. 3 weeks ago, her fellow Marines had been making jokes about her size and questioning her capabilities. Now she was being considered for one of the most elite and demanding roles in the entire Marine Corps. "Colonel, I'm honored by the opportunity," Sophia replied carefully.
"May I ask what specifically caught the attention of the Special Operations Command?" Hayes smiled and pulled out several photographs taken during the assessment.
The images showed Sophia navigating through spaces that would have been impossible for larger Marines, coordinating complex operations while maintaining awareness of multiple moving parts, and leading her team through challenges that had stumped other groups. "These photos tell a story about adaptive thinking and effective leadership," Hayes explained. "But the real evidence is in the after-action reports from your team members and the instructors who observed your performance." She handed Sophia a folder containing written evaluations from the assessment. Reading through them, Sophia was surprised by the detailed observations and positive comments from Marines who had initially doubted her abilities. Corporal Thompson had written, "Private Martinez demonstrated superior tactical judgment and the ability to see solutions that others missed."
Her leadership during the final scenario was instrumental in our success, and I would be honored to serve under her command in future operations. Private Chen's evaluation was equally positive. Martinez's ability to analyze complex situations and coordinate multiple team elements simultaneously is exceptional. Her physical advantages in confined spaces, combined with her strategic thinking, make her uniquely qualified for specialized missions. Even Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, known for his tough standards and reluctance to praise junior Marines, had submitted a glowing report. Private Martinez represents the future of Marine Corps leadership. Her performance exceeded expectations and demonstrated that combat effectiveness comes from the integration of multiple capabilities, not just physical strength. Colonel Hayes leaned back in her chair, studying Sophia carefully. The special operations community is always looking for Marines who can think differently and bring unique capabilities to challenging situations. Your size, which some people see as a limitation, we see as a significant operational advantage. She explained that modern special operations often required Marines who could operate in environments where traditional approaches were ineffective. Urban warfare, counter-terrorism operations, and specialized reconnaissance missions frequently demanded personnel who could access areas and execute tactics that were impossible for conventional forces. However, the colonel continued, special operations training is significantly more demanding than anything you've experienced so far. The physical requirements are extreme, the mental pressure is intense, and the failure rate is high. Are you prepared for that level of challenge? Sophia thought about the question seriously. The past 3 weeks had already changed her life in ways she was still processing. Word of her performance during the assessment had spread throughout the base, transforming how other Marines interacted with her. Instead of protective concern or dismissive comments, she now encountered genuine respect and professional curiosity about her techniques. Training instructors had begun using her assault on the central facility as a case study for other Marines, analyzing how she had navigated the explosive devices and coordinated the complex rescue operation. Her unconventional approaches were being incorporated into tactical training programs. But special operations represented an entirely different level of commitment and challenge. The training would push her far beyond anything she had experienced, testing not just her physical capabilities but her mental resilience and emotional strength. "Colonel, I believe I'm ready for the challenge," Sophia said finally. "The assessment showed me that my capabilities extend beyond what I had previously thought possible. I want to continue pushing those boundaries." Hayes nodded approvingly. "Good. Your training will begin in 6 weeks at the Special Operations Training Group facility in North Carolina. Between now and then, you'll undergo specialized physical conditioning and receive additional tactical education to prepare for the increased demands." As Sophia left the colonel's office, she reflected on how completely her trajectory had changed. 6 weeks ago, she had been just another junior Marine struggling to prove herself worthy of basic respect. Now she was being fast-tracked toward one of the most elite and demanding roles in the military. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of intensive preparation. Sophia worked with specialized trainers who helped her develop the specific skills she would need for special operations training. Her conditioning program was tailored to her unique physical attributes, focusing on enhancing her natural advantages while building strength and endurance. She studied advanced tactical manuals, learning about operations in environments ranging from urban warfare zones to remote wilderness areas. The complexity of special operations missions went far beyond anything covered in basic Marine training, requiring knowledge of everything from explosive devices to foreign languages. More challenging than the physical preparation was the mental conditioning. Special operations personnel had to be able to function effectively under extreme stress, making life-or-death decisions with incomplete information while maintaining focus during extended operations. Sophia worked with military psychologists who helped her develop stress management techniques and build the mental resilience needed for high-pressure situations. She learned meditation methods, visualization techniques, and cognitive strategies that would help her maintain peak performance when exhaustion and fear threatened to compromise her judgment. The psychological preparation also included realistic scenario training that simulated the mental pressures she would face during actual special operations missions. These exercises tested her ability to think clearly when confronted with simulated torture, psychological manipulation, and extreme physical discomfort. During one particularly challenging exercise, Sophia was placed in a confined space designed to trigger claustrophobia while being subjected to loud noises, flashing lights, and temperature extremes. Her task was to solve complex puzzles and make tactical decisions while enduring these stressors.
Her performance surprised even the experienced trainers conducting the exercise. Instead of being overwhelmed by the conditions, Sophia seemed to thrive in the confined space. Her natural comfort in small environments, combined with her ability to maintain focus under pressure, allowed her to complete tasks that challenged much larger and more experienced Marines. Interesting, observed Dr. Sarah Chen, the military psychologist overseeing Sophia's preparation. Most people experience increased stress in confined spaces, but you seem to find them calming. That's a significant advantage for special operations work. Dr. Chen explained that many special operations missions required personnel to operate in extremely confined conditions, crawling through tunnels, hiding in small spaces for extended periods, or accessing areas through openings that barely accommodated human passage. Your natural comfort in these environments, combined with your proven ability to think clearly under pressure, suggests you're well suited for specialized reconnaissance and infiltration missions, she continued. These roles require personnel who can maintain effectiveness while operating alone in challenging conditions for extended periods. As her departure day for special operations training approached, Sophia received visits from several Marines who had worked with her during the assessment. They wanted to understand her techniques and learn from her unconventional approaches to tactical problems. Corporal Thompson, in particular, had become an advocate for incorporating lessons from her performance into standard Marine training programs. He had submitted proposals suggesting that all Marines should receive training in alternative approaches to common tactical situations. The thing is, Thompson explained during one of their conversations, everyone focuses on the physical aspects of what you did during the assessment. But the real innovation was in how you analyzed situations and found solutions that others missed. He had been studying her approach to the hostage rescue scenarios, trying to understand the decision-making process that led to her successful outcomes. Thompson realized that her success came from combining detailed observation with willingness to consider options that seemed impossible or impractical at first glance. Most of us saw the ventilation system in that building and dismissed it as too small to be useful, he continued. You saw it as an opportunity because you were willing to consider approaches that others couldn't execute. That kind of thinking could revolutionize how we approach tactical problems. Private Knox had reached similar conclusions about her performance during the underground facility assault. Her ability to navigate complex environments while maintaining situational awareness had demonstrated techniques that could benefit all Marines, regardless of their physical characteristics. The key insight, Knox observed, is that every environment offers multiple paths to success. Most people choose the most obvious approach, but you consistently found alternatives that were more effective even if they seemed more difficult initially. These conversations reinforced Sophia's growing understanding that her contributions went beyond her individual capabilities. Her approaches to tactical problems offered lessons that could improve the effectiveness of entire Marine units. The day before her departure for special operations training, Sophia attended a farewell gathering organized by her fellow Marines. The event was held in the same courtyard where she had stood 6 weeks earlier, feeling like an outsider among Marines who questioned her capabilities. Now, that same group of Marines gathered to wish her success and express their respect for what she had accomplished. The transformation in their attitudes reflected a broader change in how the Marine Corps was beginning to think about capability and effectiveness. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez spoke on behalf of the group, presenting Sophia with a commemorative plaque recognizing her outstanding performance during the assessment. But his words carried more weight than the formal recognition. Martinez, you've taught all of us important lessons about the dangers of assumptions and the value of diverse approaches to common problems, he said. Your success has made us better Marines because it forced us to reconsider what we thought we knew about effectiveness and leadership. Colonel Hayes also attended the gathering, taking the opportunity to address the assembled Marines about the broader implications of Sophia's success. The Marine Corps has always prided itself on adapting to new challenges and finding innovative solutions to complex problems, she said. Private Martinez embodies those values by demonstrating that effectiveness comes from the combination of preparation, intelligence, determination, and the willingness to approach problems from new angles. The colonel explained that Sophia's performance had already influenced training programs and tactical development throughout the Marine Corps. Her techniques were being studied and incorporated into curricula that would benefit thousands of future Marines. But, beyond the tactical innovations, Hayes continued, Private Martinez has reminded us that our strength comes from recognizing and utilizing the full spectrum of human capabilities. The Marine Corps is stronger when we maximize the potential of every Marine, regardless of whether they fit traditional expectations. As the gathering concluded, Sophia felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her to this point.
The Marines who had initially dismissed her based on her appearance had become genuine advocates for her success. More importantly, they had learned lessons about capability and potential that would influence how they worked with others throughout their careers. Standing in that courtyard, surrounded by Marines who now saw her as a valued colleague and proven leader, Sophia reflected on the transformation that had taken place over the past 6 weeks. She had proven that the labels others placed on her were not reflections of her actual capabilities or potential. The journey toward special operations training would present new challenges and require her to continue growing and developing her skills. But she now had unshakable confidence in her ability to succeed, regardless of what obstacles she might encounter. Most importantly, Sophia had learned that breaking through assumptions and stereotypes created opportunities not just for herself, but for everyone who followed. Her success had opened doors and changed perspectives that would benefit other Marines who might not fit traditional expectations. The Marines who had labeled her fragile had discovered that their assumptions were not only wrong, but potentially dangerous in situations where lives depended on accurate assessment of capabilities and potential. That lesson would stay with them throughout their careers, making them better leaders and more effective Marines. As she prepared to leave for the next phase of her journey, Sophia knew that the real impact of her success would be measured not just by her own accomplishments, but by how her example influenced others to reconsider their assumptions and maximize the potential of everyone around them. The Special Operations Training Group facility in North Carolina looked like a different world from the standard Marine base Sophia had left behind. The buildings were more modern, the equipment more sophisticated, and the atmosphere carried an intensity that was immediately noticeable. This was where the Marine Corps transformed selected personnel into special operations capable fighters. Sophia arrived with 15 other Marines from various backgrounds, all chosen for different reasons but united by exceptional performance in their previous assignments. Looking around at her fellow candidates, she noticed she was not only the smallest person in the group, but also the only woman among the 16 selected for this training cycle. Master Sergeant James Sullivan, the lead instructor, addressed the group on their first morning with words that would set the tone for the next 12 weeks. Sullivan was a legend in special operations circles, having completed multiple tours in Afghanistan and Iraq while leading some of the most challenging missions in recent Marine Corps history. "Welcome to the most demanding training you will ever experience," Sullivan announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had tested himself in actual combat. "For the next 12 weeks, you will be pushed beyond every limit you thought you had. Most of you will fail, and that's not a criticism, it's a statistical reality." He explained that special operations training had a failure rate approaching 70%, not because the Marines weren't capable, but because the demands were so extreme that only exceptional individuals could meet the standards required for real-world missions. "Your success here won't be determined by how you compare to each other," Sullivan continued. "It will be determined by whether you can meet absolute standards that reflect the demands you'll face when lives depend on your performance." The physical training began immediately and exceeded anything Sophia had previously experienced. The conditioning programs were designed to build strength, endurance, and resilience that would allow special operations personnel to function effectively during missions lasting days or weeks. Daily workouts included advanced calisthenics, long-distance running with heavy equipment, obstacle courses designed to simulate mission environments, and strength training that pushed every candidate to their limits. The physical demands were brutal, but they were only one component of the comprehensive training program. Sophia discovered that her previous preparation had been valuable but insufficient for the intensity she now faced. Her natural advantages in confined spaces and her proven ability to think under pressure remained assets, but she had to develop new capabilities to meet the increased demands. The first major challenge came during the third week of training with an exercise called the Breaking Point Assessment. Each candidate was subjected to 72 hours of continuous stress designed to test their mental resilience when physical and emotional resources were depleted. The exercise began with a 30-mile march carrying full equipment, followed by complex problem-solving tasks that had to be completed while under simulated enemy fire. Candidates then faced interrogation sessions designed to test their ability to resist psychological pressure and protect sensitive information. Sophia found herself in a small concrete room, sitting in an uncomfortable chair while instructors bombarded her with questions, loud noises, and flashing lights. The goal was to maintain focus and resist providing information that could compromise simulated missions or endanger fellow Marines. Her experience during the pre-training preparation proved invaluable. The psychological conditioning she had received, combined with her natural comfort in confined spaces, allowed her to maintain mental clarity when other candidates began showing signs of stress-induced breakdown.
After 18 hours of continuous interrogation, many candidates had become disoriented or aggressive. Sophia, however, remained calm and focused, using meditation techniques and mental visualization to maintain her psychological stability. Interesting approach, Martinez, observed Dr. Rebecca Torres, the psychologist monitoring the exercise. Most candidates try to resist the stress directly, but you seem to be accepting it and working within it rather than fighting against it. Dr. Torres explained that Sophia's response demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of stress management that was unusual among military personnel. Instead of viewing the harsh conditions as obstacles to overcome, she was treating them as environmental factors to navigate around. That's a valuable skill for special operations work, Torres continued. Real missions often involve extended periods in challenging conditions where direct resistance to stress is counterproductive. Your ability to adapt and find effective strategies within stressful environments could be a significant operational advantage. The breaking point assessment continued for another 24 hours, with candidates facing physical challenges, complex tactical problems, and continued psychological pressure. By the end of the 72-hour period, 6 candidates had been eliminated from the program, unable to meet the standards required for continuation. Sophia not only completed the assessment successfully, but her performance was noted as exceptional by the training staff. Her ability to maintain effectiveness while others struggled had demonstrated exactly the kind of resilience needed for special operations missions. The tactical training component proved even more demanding than the physical conditioning. Special operations personnel were expected to master skills ranging from advanced marksmanship and explosives handling to foreign languages and cultural awareness. Sophia excelled at the technical aspects of the training, particularly those involving precision and attention to detail. Her marksmanship scores consistently ranked among the top in her class, and her performance with explosive devices was noted by instructors as exceptionally careful and effective. The language training component required candidates to achieve functional proficiency in at least one foreign language relevant to current operational needs. Sophia chose Arabic, recognizing that Middle Eastern operations remained a high priority for special operations forces. Her approach to language learning reflected the same methodical precision she brought to tactical problems. While other candidates struggled with pronunciation and grammar, Sophia focused on understanding the cultural context that gave meaning to the language structures. Martinez has an intuitive grasp of how language and culture interact, observed Captain Sarah Al-Rashid, the Arabic language instructor. She's not just learning vocabulary and grammar, she's developing the cultural awareness needed to operate effectively in Arabic-speaking environments. This cultural competency would prove crucial for special operations missions, where success often depended on the ability to blend into local populations and understand social dynamics that might not be obvious to outsiders. The most challenging aspect of the training proved to be the extended field exercises that simulated real-world special operations missions. These exercises lasted days or weeks and tested every skill candidates had learned while pushing them to their physical and mental limits. The first major field exercise placed candidates in a remote wilderness area with minimal equipment and required them to complete complex objectives while evading enemy forces played by experienced special operations personnel. The scenario was designed to test survival skills, tactical judgment, and the ability to function effectively when isolated from support. Sophia found herself assigned to a team with 3 other candidates: Staff Sergeant Michael Roberts, a former infantry marine with extensive combat experience, Sergeant Lisa Park, a communications specialist with advanced technical skills, and Corporal David Kim, a reconnaissance marine known for his fieldcraft abilities. Their mission was to infiltrate an enemy compound, gather intelligence on simulated weapons programs, and escape without detection. The exercise area covered over 50 square miles of difficult terrain, and the opposing forces were given significant advantages to create realistic pressure. Roberts initially took leadership of the team, drawing on his combat experience and senior rank. However, as the mission progressed, it became apparent that the challenges they faced required different approaches than conventional infantry tactics. The enemy compound was heavily defended and positioned in terrain that made traditional assault approaches extremely difficult. Moreover, the intelligence requirements demanded access to areas that could only be reached through confined spaces and unconventional routes. Martinez, Roberts said after studying the target for several hours, "This looks like a job that plays to your strengths. What do you think our best approach is?" Sophia had been analyzing the compound layout and had identified several potential infiltration routes that other Marines might not be able to use effectively. The target facility included underground storage areas, narrow utility corridors, and ventilation systems that could provide access to sensitive areas. The key is getting inside without triggering their perimeter defenses, she explained. If we can access the facility through the utility systems, we can gather the intelligence while the guards focus on external threats. Her plan involved using her size advantage to infiltrate the compound through a storm drainage system that connected to the underground areas. Once inside, she could gather the required intelligence while her teammates provided surveillance and early warning from external positions. Roberts recognized the value of her approach, but expressed concern about the risks involved.
That puts you completely alone inside enemy territory. If something goes wrong, we won't be able to provide support.
The risk is manageable if we coordinate properly, Sophia replied. Your team can create distractions that draw attention away from the areas where I need to operate. If the plan works correctly, the guards will never know I was there. The infiltration mission unfolded exactly as Sophia had planned. While Roberts, Park, and Kim created carefully timed distractions around the perimeter, she accessed the compound through the drainage system and gathered comprehensive intelligence on the simulated weapons programs. Her movement through the facility was ghost-like, avoiding detection while photographing documents, recording conversations, and mapping layouts that would be valuable for future operations. The confined spaces that would have prevented other Marines from attempting this approach allowed her to complete the mission without alerting any of the defending forces. When the team regrouped at their extraction point, they had exceeded the mission objectives while maintaining complete operational security. The intelligence gathered by Sophia was more comprehensive than the training staff had expected, and their escape had been executed without a single security breach.
Master Sergeant Sullivan debriefed the exercise with obvious satisfaction.
Outstanding performance by the entire team, but particularly notable was the innovative approach to the infiltration challenge. Martinez, your solution demonstrated exactly the kind of adaptive thinking we need in special operations. The success of the infiltration exercise led to Sophia being assigned increasingly complex solo missions during the remaining field exercises. These assignments tested her ability to operate independently while maintaining communication with support elements and adapting to changing situations. During one particularly challenging exercise, Sophia was tasked with conducting surveillance on a simulated terrorist cell operating in an urban environment. The mission required her to maintain observation for 72 hours while gathering intelligence on the group's activities and planned operations. The urban setting presented unique challenges that differed significantly from wilderness operations. She had to blend into civilian populations, operate in buildings with complex layouts, and gather intelligence while avoiding detection by both the target group and local security forces. Sophia's approach combined her technical skills with cultural awareness she had developed during Arabic language training.
She established multiple observation posts in areas that provided good sightlines while offering concealment and escape routes.
Her reports provided detailed information about the terrorist cell's membership, meeting locations, communication methods, and operational planning. The intelligence she gathered exceeded expectations and demonstrated advanced analytical capabilities that complemented her tactical skills. By the 8th week of training, Sophia had established herself as one of the most capable candidates in her class. Her performance across all training components had been consistently exceptional, and she had demonstrated unique capabilities that were valuable for specialized missions.
However, the most demanding challenges still lay ahead.
The final 4 weeks of training would include the most difficult exercises, designed to eliminate candidates who couldn't meet the absolute standards required for special operations certification. The penultimate exercise was called Total Integration, and it combined every skill candidates had learned during their 12 weeks of training into a single complex mission that lasted 10 days. Success required flawless execution across multiple domains while operating under extreme stress and resource constraints. Sophia's assigned mission involved infiltrating a simulated hostile territory to gather intelligence, coordinate with friendly resistance forces, and prepare for a larger special operations strike against strategic targets. The scenario was based on actual historical operations and reflected the complexity of real-world special operations missions. The mission began with a high-altitude parachute insertion into enemy territory 40 miles from her objectives. Sophia had to navigate to her target area while avoiding detection, establish contact with resistance elements using predetermined signals, and begin intelligence-gathering operations. The parachute insertion went perfectly, with Sophia landing within 50 meters of her planned location. Her navigation skills, honed during weeks of wilderness training, allowed her to reach her first objective 12 hours ahead of schedule despite difficult terrain and weather conditions. Establishing contact with the resistance forces proved more challenging than expected. The local operatives were suspicious of outsiders and required proof of her legitimacy that went beyond predetermined code words. Sophia had to demonstrate tactical knowledge and cultural awareness that convinced them she was genuinely affiliated with friendly forces. Once contact was established, Sophia began coordinating intelligence-gathering operations that involved multiple resistance cells operating across a wide geographic area. Her role required managing information from various sources while maintaining operational security and preparing for the planned special operations strike. The intelligence phase of the mission revealed that enemy forces had changed their deployment patterns since the original mission planning. Sophia had to analyze the new situation and recommend modifications to the strike plan that would account for the altered circumstances. Her recommendations demonstrated sophisticated understanding of tactical principles and operational planning that impressed even experienced special operations instructors observing the exercise. She had identified vulnerabilities in the enemy deployment that could be exploited while recognizing threats that hadn't been anticipated in the original planning. The final phase of the total integration exercise required Sophia to coordinate the special operations strike while continuing her intelligence-gathering mission. This meant managing multiple complex operations simultaneously while maintaining communication security and adapting to rapidly changing conditions. When the exercise concluded, Sophia had successfully completed every aspect of her mission while exceeding performance standards in multiple areas. Her intelligence reports were comprehensive and accurate, her coordination with resistance forces had been flawless, and her recommendations for the strike operation had been adopted by the planning staff. The graduation ceremony for Special Operations Training Group took place on a crisp morning in late fall, with golden leaves scattered across the parade ground where the remaining candidates stood in formation. Of the 16 Marines who had begun the program 12 weeks earlier, only 7 had successfully completed all requirements and earned certification for special operations duties. Sophia stood among those 7 survivors, wearing the distinctive insignia that marked her as a qualified Special Operations Marine. The transformation she had undergone during the training was evident not just in her physical conditioning, which had reached levels she had never thought possible, but in her confidence and bearing as a professional warrior. General Robert Morrison, commanding officer of Marine Special Operations Command, addressed the graduating class with words that emphasized the significance of their achievement. Morrison was a legendary figure in the special operations community, having led forces during some of the most challenging missions of the past 2 decades. Today marks not an ending, but a beginning, General Morrison announced. You have proven that you possess the skills, determination, and character needed for special operations. Now you face the real test, applying those capabilities in defense of our nation and our fellow Marines. He explained that each graduate would be assigned to operational units where they would continue developing their skills while participating in real-world missions. The training they had completed was comprehensive, but experience in actual operations would continue shaping them throughout their careers. Your success here demonstrates that excellence comes in many forms, Morrison continued, his gaze briefly meeting Sophia's. The Marine Corps is stronger because we recognize and develop the full spectrum of human potential. Each of you brings unique capabilities that will enhance our operational effectiveness. After the ceremony, Sophia received her assignment orders. She would be joining the 2nd Marine Special Operations Battalion, based at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. The battalion specialized in direct action missions, special reconnaissance, and foreign internal defense operations in diverse environments around the world. Her specific assignment was to Bravo Company's reconnaissance team, where her demonstrated skills in infiltration, intelligence gathering, and operations in confined environments would be particularly valuable. The team was scheduled to deploy to the Middle East within 6 months, providing her time to integrate with the unit and continue specialized training. Captain Jennifer Walsh, Bravo Company's commanding officer, met with Sophia during her first week at Camp Lejeune to discuss her role and expectations. Walsh was a 12-year veteran of special operations with multiple deployments and a reputation for innovative tactical thinking. Your training record is impressive, Martinez, Walsh said, reviewing Sophia's file. But what really caught our attention were the after-action reports describing your approach to complex problems. We need Marines who can see solutions that others miss. She explained that modern special operations missions increasingly required personnel who could operate in environments where traditional approaches were ineffective. Urban warfare, counter-terrorism operations, and specialized reconnaissance missions frequently demanded innovative tactics and the ability to adapt quickly to changing situations. Your demonstrated capabilities in confined space operations and intelligence gathering make you particularly valuable for missions involving infiltration and surveillance, Walsh continued.
We're planning several operations that will require exactly those skills. Sophia's integration into the Special Operations team proceeded smoothly.
Her new teammates were all experienced operators who understood the value of diverse capabilities within their unit. Unlike her early days in basic training, there were no questions about her qualifications or whispered doubts about her abilities. Staff Sergeant Carlos Mendoza, the team's senior enlisted Marine, had reviewed Sophia's training records and was particularly interested in her unconventional approaches to tactical problems. Mendoza had 15 years of special operations experience and recognized the potential value of her unique skill set. The thing about special ops, Mendoza explained during one of their training sessions, is that conventional approaches often don't work.
We need people who can think differently and find solutions that aren't in the manual.
He shared examples from his own deployment experience where success had depended on innovative thinking rather than standard procedures. In one memorable mission, his team had needed to gather intelligence from a compound that was impossible to approach using normal infiltration techniques. Success had required finding creative solutions that utilized the unique capabilities of individual team members. Your approach reminds me of some of the most successful operators I've worked with, Mendoza continued. The best special operations Marines aren't necessarily the biggest or strongest, they're the ones who can analyze situations clearly and find effective solutions regardless of the obstacles. Sophia's training with the operational team included advanced courses in subjects ranging from advanced marksmanship and explosives handling to cultural awareness and foreign languages. The team maintained proficiency in multiple specializations to ensure they could adapt to various mission requirements. Her technical skills continued to develop as she worked with sophisticated equipment used in special operations missions. Night vision systems, advanced communication devices, specialized weapons, and reconnaissance technology all required extensive training to use effectively in operational environments. The physical training regimen with the operational team was even more demanding than what she had experienced during special operations training. The team maintained peak conditioning through daily workouts that combined strength training, cardiovascular conditioning, and functional exercises designed to simulate mission demands. Sophia found that her body had adapted to handle physical challenges that would have seemed impossible when she first enlisted. Her strength and endurance had increased dramatically, while her natural advantages in flexibility and agility had been enhanced through specialized training.
Mental conditioning remained equally important as physical preparation.
The team regularly participated in stress inoculation exercises designed to maintain peak psychological performance under extreme pressure.
These exercises simulated the mental challenges of extended operations in hostile environments.
During one particularly demanding exercise, Sophia and her teammates were placed in isolation for 72 hours while being subjected to sleep deprivation, temperature extremes, and psychological pressure. Their task was to continue functioning effectively while planning complex operations and making critical decisions. Sophia's performance during these exercises consistently impressed her teammates and supervisors. Her ability to maintain mental clarity when others began showing signs of stress-induced deterioration demonstrated the psychological resilience needed for the most challenging special operations missions. 6 months after joining the operational team, Sophia received notification that they would be deploying to Syria as part of a joint task force conducting counter-terrorism operations.
The mission would involve working with coalition forces and local allies to disrupt terrorist networks operating in the region.
The deployment represented the culmination of everything Sophia had worked toward since her first day in Marine Corps basic training. She would finally have the opportunity to apply her skills in real-world operations where the stakes were genuine and the consequences of failure could be measured in human lives. Before deployment, the team underwent intensive mission-specific training that included cultural preparation, language review, and tactical rehearsals using intelligence about their operational area. They studied satellite imagery, reviewed intelligence reports, and practiced techniques they would need for their assigned missions. Sophia's role in the deployment would focus on reconnaissance and intelligence gathering operations that required infiltration of areas that were inaccessible to conventional forces. Her demonstrated expertise in confined space operations and surveillance techniques made her ideally suited for missions involving urban reconnaissance and intelligence collection. The final training exercise before deployment involved a comprehensive scenario that simulated the operational environment they would encounter in Syria. The exercise tested their ability to coordinate with coalition partners, work with local allies, and execute complex missions under realistic constraints. During the exercise, Sophia's team was tasked with gathering intelligence on a simulated terrorist cell operating in an urban area. The mission required infiltration of hostile territory, establishment of surveillance positions, and coordination with local forces to gather comprehensive information about terrorist activities. Sophia's approach to the mission demonstrated how completely her capabilities had developed since her early days as a basic Marine trainee. Her infiltration techniques were sophisticated and effective, her surveillance methods were professional and thorough, and her coordination with allied forces was seamless and productive. The intelligence she gathered during the exercise exceeded all expectations and provided information that significantly enhanced the overall mission success. Her ability to operate independently while maintaining communication with her team and allied forces demonstrated exactly the kind of capability needed for their upcoming deployment. When the exercise concluded, Captain Walsh conducted a detailed debrief that emphasized the lessons learned and areas for continued improvement. However, her comments about Sophia's performance reflected complete confidence in her readiness for operational deployment.
"Martinez, your development over the past 6 months has been outstanding," Walsh said. "Your technical skills, tactical judgment, and ability to work effectively with diverse teams make you a valuable asset for our upcoming deployment." She explained that Sophia's first operational assignment would involve establishing surveillance positions in urban areas where terrorist cells were suspected of operating. The mission would require extended periods of independent operation while gathering intelligence that would support larger counter-terrorism operations. "This is exactly the kind of mission where your unique capabilities will be most valuable," Walsh continued. "Your ability to access areas that others can't reach, combined with your proven intelligence-gathering skills, makes you ideally suited for this type of operation." As the team prepared for deployment, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought her to this point. Less than 2 years earlier, she had been standing in formation at Camp Pendleton, listening to her fellow Marines make jokes about her size and question her capabilities. Now she was preparing to deploy as a qualified Special Operations Marine, trusted with missions that required the highest levels of skill and professionalism. The transformation was remarkable not just in terms of her own development, but in how completely perceptions of her capabilities had changed. The Marines who had initially labeled her as fragile had learned valuable lessons about the dangers of making assumptions based on appearance. More importantly, their changed attitudes had influenced how they worked with other Marines throughout their careers, making them more effective leaders and teammates. Colonel Hayes, who had first recommended Sophia for special operations training, visited the team during their final preparations for deployment. She wanted to personally congratulate Sophia on her achievement and discuss the broader impact of her success. "Your journey has demonstrated something important about the nature of military effectiveness," Hayes explained. "Combat capability comes from the integration of multiple factors, not just physical strength or traditional measures of toughness." She pointed out that Sophia's success had influenced training programs throughout the Marine Corps, encouraging instructors to look beyond traditional assumptions when evaluating potential. Her techniques were being studied and incorporated into curricula that would benefit thousands of future Marines. "But, perhaps most importantly," Hayes continued, "your example has shown that our strength comes from maximizing the potential of every Marine. The Corps is more effective when we recognize and develop the full spectrum of human capabilities." Standing on the eve of her first operational deployment, Sophia felt profound gratitude for the opportunity she had been given and the support she had received from Marines who had looked beyond surface appearances to recognize her potential. The transformation from a Marine labeled as fragile to a special operations professional trusted with critical missions represented more than individual achievement. It demonstrated that assumptions based on appearance could be not just wrong, but dangerous when lives depended on accurate assessment of capabilities. The Marines who had initially doubted her abilities had become genuine advocates for her success and proponents of the lessons her journey had taught. Their changed perspectives would influence how they evaluated and developed other Marines throughout their careers, creating lasting positive impact beyond her individual accomplishments. As Sophia prepared for deployment, she knew that the real measure of her success would not be the recognition she had received or the assignments she had earned. It would be how effectively she applied her capabilities in defense of her fellow Marines and in service to her country. The journey from basic training to special operations had proven that the most dangerous assumption in military service was underestimating potential based on first impressions. Physical appearance, background, or traditional expectations could never fully capture the complex combination of factors that determined effectiveness in challenging situations.
More than proving her own capabilities, Sophia had demonstrated that the Marine Corps was stronger when it recognized and developed the full range of human potential. Her success had opened doors and changed perspectives that would benefit countless others who might not fit traditional expectations but possessed the determination and skills needed for military excellence. The Marines who had labeled her fragile had learned that their assumptions were not just incorrect, but potentially catastrophic in situations where accurate assessment of capabilities could mean the difference between mission success and failure. That lesson would serve them well throughout their careers, making them better leaders and more effective Marines.